Hi, I'm Bob Fitrakis. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor on the Green Party ticket. Well, I'm running because I believe there should be a party and candidates, myself, Bob Fitrakis, and our gubernatorial candidate, Anita Rios, who aren't essentially ensnared with the corporate capitalists that run this system. I believe that the 99% should have representation. I believe in relocalization. I believe in entrepreneurship. What I don't believe in is 1% owning all the wealth and exploiting people globally. And I also believe there should be a party that stands up for the Constitution, believes in peace, and that when people are spying in this state on citizens of Ohio, that we'll have a governor and a lieutenant governor that will order those people arrested for violating constitutional rights. That's why I'm running.
I'm Sean Nestor. I support Anita Rios for Ohio governor because I believe that we should restore fair education funding in Ohio.
My name is Vera Lucia Mendoza, and I support Anita Rios for governor because I support fair and compassionate immigration reform.
My name is Colleen Eldridge. I'm from Toledo, Ohio, where we have had two abortion clinics negatively affected by the laws that Kasich has passed, and several abortion clinics have closed throughout Ohio. I support Anita Rios because she is the only candidate qualified to fight for women's rights.
My name is Ruben Castilla. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I'm a longtime resident and organizer activist with Latino and immigrant issues in the state and the region and actually nationally as well. I'm happy to be here today to talk about my support briefly for Anita Rios for governor. I'm a long-time person who's been involved with politics and have worked in the ins and outs of a two-party system. And it wasn't really till recently that I realized that it was the time I was spending in that system, and also with immigration issues, specifically of immigration reform, how it's time for Latinos and Hispanics, people in Ohio, to really understand the power of their vote and to vote for people that support things about our community. And so that's why I definitely am supporting Anita for governor. I have many talks with her about immigration reform and stopping the deportations, and she's the candidate that supports us most. And so I would ask other Latino sisters and brothers throughout the state, and non-Latinos as well, to really wake up and vote for people that support us, and that's how we're going to move forward together.
Well, Anita Rios is here. I'm running, I have the privilege of running as lieutenant governor with her in this election. And we wanted to give her a chance. Hopefully we can get John Kasich over here. I've been chasing him since 1992 when he refused to debate me for the first time, and now he's refused to debate not only Mr. Fitzgerald, but Anita Rios, and I think he has more to fear from Anita than from Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I give you Anita Rios.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob and Suzanne, for hosting us, and thank you to everybody for coming out. Now, I just wanted to mention one housekeeping thing, and to thank everybody who has donated so far, but also to remind you that because of campaign finance laws, we need employer information from you if you donated. So if you could just write down the name of your employer and hand that to the treasurer.
If you've donated $100 or more.
Okay.
Then I need it.
So if you've donated $100 or more, we need your employer information. And thank you. Okay, so what I usually do when I talk to folks, and I'm sure that some of this is not news to you, but what I usually do is I explain a little bit about how I ended up being the Green Party's candidate for governor. And then I talk a little bit about some of the issues that we've been talking about in the campaign, and then I want to hear any questions that you have. So, as I said, this might not be news to some of you, but I still like to go over it because it's a very good story, and I think it starts the discussion as a discussion of democracy and how we do democracy and how we do campaigns here in Ohio and here in the United States. So last year, the state legislature passed a law that in effect eliminated all the minor parties in Ohio. They eliminated us, they eliminated the Libertarian Constitution Party and the Socialists. And they did that towards the end of the year. That was like in the middle of the petitioning to get candidates on the ballot for the primary. We sued them, the Libertarians sued them. We were successful in our lawsuit, and our party status was reinstated, but by that time, it was pretty late for us to get our candidates on the ballot. So when we had our convention in February last year, or actually at the beginning of this year, some of us got together and we decided we were going to give it a shot to try to get a write-in candidate on the ballot in November by doing a write-in campaign in the primary. Now that's never been done, and we knew it would be a very, very hard thing to get done because in most of Ohio's 88 counties there was not going to be other Greens on the ballot. So what we were asking people to do was in effect go in, ask for a ballot that wasn't going to have anything else on it except if there was issues in their area, and then write in me and Bob. And it was a long shot, but it succeeded. We got the necessary votes. We needed 500 write-in votes. We got, I think it was around 700. And Bob tells me that they threw out a lot of votes here in Franklin County, so we think we got well more than that. Nonetheless, we got enough to get me and Bob on the ballot for November. So Bob and I are going to be the only third-party candidates on the ballot in November for governor. So we've already come a very long way with this campaign. But now we're in the last stretch of this campaign, and what we are doing is taking this opportunity to talk about some of those things that we know that the other candidates will not talk about. We talk about fracking, we talk about how we must oppose fracking and what that is doing to our environment here in Ohio. We talk about living wages, we talk about how the tax inequity in this state has gotten so much worse under the governor. And we know that many communities have been hit very hard by how the state has calculated the taxes and how the state has taken so much money out of communities. And we know where that money has gone. It's gone into Jobs Ohio, that is a completely unmanageable private entity that the people of Ohio have no ability to monitor, we have no ability to scrutinize, we have no ability to see where our tax dollars are going, how they are being spent, and whether or not they are being successfully used to bring jobs into Ohio. So we were talking about Jobs Ohio, we would absolutely close that down. We're talking about the legalization of marijuana. And we're talking about that because we know that this is a very bad use of our resources here in Ohio to keep marijuana illegal. It wastes lives, it wastes money in the criminal justice system, and we're talking about broader issues in the criminal justice system. We want to put an end to the school-to-prison pipeline, which is very real. In many inner-city schools, you know, you have those, what are they called? The school resource officers, and they are really uniformed police officers in those schools that are getting those students accustomed to what they will be dealing with when they grow up, which is they will deal with the criminal justice system. I think that's a bad model, it's a bad message to send our children. We should not send our children to schools with cops. And that's not to say that we are not concerned about the safety of those schools. That should be everyone's concern. But that's not a good model, and that's not a real solution. Some of the other issues that we're talking about in terms of the criminal justice system is putting an end to capital punishment. We don't believe that a society should ever murder its people, not for any reason other. And we would also seek clemency for the Lucasville Five. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Lucasville Five issue, but you know, the Lucasville riot culminated in the trial of the Lucasville Five. The Lucasville Five were activists. They were the people who stepped up in that prison and brought order to that situation, and they negotiated with the prison officials to end that prison riot. And after that was over, they were charged with murdering the prison guard. And honestly, that was never proven. No one knows who killed that prison guard. These men are scapegoats. I would say these men are heroes. You had men who were African American, who were Muslims. You had men who were from the Aryan Brotherhood, who were white, and they came together to make order during that riot. They did a great thing, and they became the scapegoats. And now those men are sitting on death row. And if I were governor, I would grant all of them clemency. So what are some other really tough issues that we are talking about? We are talking about education. We're talking about how it should be the right of every student in Ohio to have a quality education from cradle to grave, if that's what they want. We believe that all of our students have the right to an education. Personally, I would fire every single college president in this state. I think that they are complicit. They are complicit in the creation of an educational system that is more like a corporation than the universities that they should be. And shame on them for taking the salaries that they take while it is becoming less and less possible for students to afford those tuitions. So those are just some of the things that we are talking about. And we're talking about these things because these are doable things. These are things that we could have now in Ohio, that we just need some courageous leaders to figure out some innovative ways to allow our community to thrive, and who need to move beyond the two-party system. But more than anything, what we are fighting for, Bob and I, is to maintain party status for the Green Party, so that in the future, when we run candidates, that it'll be easier for those candidates to get on the ballot, because that's what happens when you're a political party. The standards, what you have to get, the petition signatures that you have to get, the hoops that you have to jump through are fewer if you're a political party. It allows you to strengthen, it allows you to grow.
And if I may, I think the single most important thing in this state is keeping the Green Party on the ballot. Let me remind you, many of you are activists here. In 2004, it was not the Democratic Party of the cowardly John Kerry with $7 million in the bank. He caved in. When there were open stealing of this election, when they sent out the stream of votes to Chattanooga, Tennessee, who was the person that challenged on the recount? It was Anita Rios. She's the named plaintiff. And then later in King Lincoln, it was not the Democrats. And in 2012, it was the Green Party, through my campaign, being on the ballot, that was able to challenge Houston and expose this private stream of custom patches. So, and we can't count on the Democratic Party. They'll talk about voter suppression, but in this age of computers, where Target and Morgan Chase, where the stuff is hacked daily, supposedly they're not going to go after the least secure computers on earth, the election computers, right? That's the Green Party, and Anita Rios should be given great thanks for what she did in 2004, and we'll do it again. We're not afraid to sue for Democrats.
That's one of my proudest moments, and once in a while I'll go online and I'll, put in there Rios v. Blackwell. Because it brings up that lawsuit, and I was proud to do that, and I was proud to work with Bob to do that, and so many other activists. So yes, there is a lot at stake in this race, and not least of which being that we will maintain our party status, we believe, if we get 2% of the vote. Now, let me not mislead you. I think that the state legislature will come after us again, because that's what they do. They don't want competition, and I think that they will make it hard for us to maintain party status. But with that 2%, it will be much harder for them to do that, and we can rely on the courts a little bit more to support us if we get that 2%.
Your name is actually on the ballot this time.
I know, it's on the ballot, you don't have to write it in. Any questions? Anything? Yes,
Anita,
Fred.
did the Republicans give the Green Party a pass to get on the ballot this time in order to take votes away from the Democrat? And whereas they would not let the Libertarians on, is there any sign of that?
Absolutely not. I don't believe so.
No, here was the key difference. Both us and the Libertarians, were severely what they did, first of all, this came right out of Governor Kasich's office. That's the first thing everyone needs to know. That's what the Libertarian Party has done during discovery. Kasich was going after the Libertarian Party. The easiest way to do it was to take out, we were collateral damage, right? He was doing a drive-by on the Libertarian who was running at 6%. So what the Libertarians did is, and it's understandable, they allowed help to come in through a Democratic connected PAC, which is legal. But what the Houston did is he put, our old friend Brad Smith as the objective person to decide as the hearing officer. And what he said is that they didn't check a box saying that they were employees of the Libertarian Party, but they weren't. They were working for a separate PAC. So Brad Smith held that disclosure eliminated the Libertarians from the ballot. We, on the other hand, only had 628 signatures. We needed 500. We did the math. We knew we weren't going to get them. So I was also aware there was a state law that had never been utilized, and that was that you could write in. But how do you write in a primary where there's no candidates? Everyone said it was impossible, but through Anita's efforts and the efforts of Greens all over the state, what we did is what was supposed to be impossible. And what they did is assassinate the Libertarian Party.
And just to clarify that a little bit, for folks who are not as familiar with this as Cliff and Bob. So what Cliff's question was is why are we still here and the Libertarians are not, in essence, and yes, we did get caught up in the Republican Party's attack on the Libertarians. And yes, they pay a little bit less attention to us than they do with the Libertarians, but the Libertarians have more resources. They have some very deep pockets that they can draw on. And they took a different strategy for getting their candidate on the ballot. They actually paid petitioners to come in and get those signatures, because when the court threw out that legislation that put us, that recognized us once again, it also recognized the Libertarians too. So they tried to get their candidate on the ballot by getting the signatures to get their candidate on the ballot. And they succeeded. But through a loophole that Bob just explained, those signatures were thrown out. So then they ended up with nobody on the ballot. We didn't have the resources to pay anybody to petition. So, and it was the middle of the winter. Remember what last winter was like? It was nasty. So we didn't have a hope of doing that. So we took a different strategy, which was just as risky, was to do the write-in. So that's how we ended up succeeding, was through the write-in.
And the other thing is the Democratic counties, particularly Franklin County, refused to hand out the ballot with our names on it, when people were asked. And 454 people in Franklin tried to vote absentee. 71 were successful. So I don't know if the Republicans were easy on it. All I know is that the Democrats, I believe, were engaged in illegal voter suppression. But to some extent, in some rural counties I did see, the Republican-controlled counties with the executive director put our actual name on. You write in, vote, Governor Rios, the trade. Here, just a screen popped up, and unless you asked for the paper, all election day, people would call me, and I think Susan called me, trying to say, what do I write?
They instructed me incorrectly. My vote was disqualified.
Oh,
And they even called headquarters. They even called the headquarters.
Bill Anthony, the former chair of the Democratic Party, and
we heard that
Can I say
all
something?
over.
What this gentleman was speaking about, and as far as what I want to just add something now, you said the libertarians, they have deeper pockets, the PACs, and all of that. Okay, I give you that, I grant that. But they also would be doing this to simply split the vote, because then they can play around with the numbers and say that because they want to keep a two-party system. That is so archaic now that in this world we live in, that we have to get past that. You can't just have the Bush family and the Clintons coming back in, because next thing you know, they're going to be running Chelsea Clinton for president or whatever, and when they let her, get her family together and all that. See, we have to get past it, because there are a lot of people out here that have different views, different aspirations. You cannot possibly sit here and say, well, if you're not Republican or you're not Democrat, you're either or. But what about the other views? What about
the majority of view in this state is independent, right?
Right. That's the best way to go anyway. In that sense, outside of this party, is
there are libertarians still running for secretary of state.
There are libertarians on the ballot, but not for governor.
But the law requires the gubernatorial candidate get 2%, and that's who they eliminate.
So,
But you got it.
you had a question?
No, I'm one is a kind of moving forward question, as far as what can we best do aside from voting for you, for both of you to really move the cause forward, and what's the most effective way in our community?
Well, you could run, Ruben.
Election cycle, because look, the reality is, we have to take a long view of politics, and it has to be beyond this election cycle. It has to be, and Bob's right, this is all about that next crop of candidates, and I hope that some of them are in this room. And, I think that we are the missing piece, we the people, we're we the people. And I think that self-governance is a wonderful idea. And I think that if people want to run for office, that is the next step. And, I'm really disheartened with how politics is done, and I know a lot of other people are. Unfortunately, what I see, in particular, I think among young people and people of color, is that they're so discouraged with it, they don't participate anymore. And I think that's a bad approach, because, somebody banks on us staying home. Somebody banks on us giving up. Somebody banks on letting them take ownership of that process. But you know what? I think of politics as a people's house. And, or government is a people's house, and politics is that door to that house. And we gotta go through that door so that we can take control of what's going on in that house.
Anita, besides the issue of stolen elections, election fraud, and possibly political assassinations, is there some issue, what other issues do you and Bob differ with Ed Fitzgerald and Newstead?
What other issues? Well, we know he's pro-choice, and we're pro-choice, we like that. I think in terms of some of our economics of marijuana, of course, we're not just talking about medical marijuana, we're talking about recreational marijuana. That's a whole underground economy. It makes sense to bring that forward, to bring that above ground. You know, I would love to put all those drug dealers that are engaged in nefarious acts out of business, and that's how we do it. But I also want to make sure that we are not spending money to incarcerate people who didn't do anything violent or wrong. They violated a bad law. So those are some other issues, but I think fundamentally it's how we approach economic solutions to the problems. We are not in bed with the corporations. We don't think corporations are people. We don't think money is speech. We don't take PAC money. And we feel like we must change the model of politics if people are going to play a greater role in politics. Does that answer your question?
Fitzgerald
And then we
supports
also for the
fracking.
state bank, which I
State
think.
Bank. Okay, now I have Lucy back there, and
I had a question about immigration reform and what you plan to do at a state level. President Obama has passed, for example, deferred action for childhood arrivals, and he promised immigration activists that a reform would be passed through executive order. And now he's delayed that promise until after the elections, which all feels like a political ploy. And I wanted to know what you would like to do on, a closer community state level.
well, Bob and I both support amnesty for undocumented immigrants. And I think that that makes good sense both economically and in terms of security. When we have, and those folks are here, this is not about planning for something in the future. This is about getting things right now. And to have that many workers who are so disempowered that they cannot advocate for themselves, it will affect our economic systems. And I know that in places like Toledo, where we are from, it's a depressed area, but by not granting legal status to undocumented immigrants, we keep wages lower and we suppress a whole class of people who could be contributing to our communities.
So other than support, is there going to be an active sort of reform that could be done in the state level?
I have been asking myself that quite a bit. Maybe Ruben has an answer.
Well, I mean, and we have to have this conversation, is I know that California in the last year passed something where municipalities and counties do not comply to ICE detainers.
Right,
And
that's
so
one
that came
thing.
at a legislative level. It usually happens in counties. We've sent letters around different counties here, but that sort of would be something that I would suggest. The other is state of Oregon, where I used to live, right now has a ballot initiative, it's 88, to grant driver's license to undocumented people, which makes it more safe, it makes it more accountable.
Which Ohio used to allow.
I don't think that they've ever allowed it.
I know you
Maybe
used to be
Indiana.
able to do it with just your passport.
So I mean, those are two initiatives that probably, they're not just so out there anymore because they're happening in other states, but that's something that maybe we could talk about maybe.
And we'd absolutely support that,
Yeah.
yes.
Two things. The Bread organization is sort of advocating to try to get Columbus to do that special driver's license, and they're resisting, but some of the administrations, including, I believe, the city attorney, would support it. But are you and Ed Fitzgerald going to appear at the City Club sometime?
Yes,
Together.
on the 22nd, there's going to be a debate at the City Club, and of course, Governor Kasich has refused to join us, but Ed Fitzgerald and I will be debating at the City Club in Cleveland on the 22nd. We do have the ability to get seats if anybody here wants to come up to that. But in addition to that, there's going to be an event here. It is not a debate. It is at the
The
Metropolitan.
Metropolitan Club, the athletic club downtown.
And that's going to be on the 22nd also. It's a lunchtime event. And this will help us get the word out there about our campaign. And we are looking for folks from here in Columbus to attend that. So if you are interested in attending that, I know you can go to their website and get tickets. And also you can talk to Bob and
Yeah,
Suzanne.
the Free Press bought 8 tickets. Suzanne and I'll be there, and if other people are interested.
Both of those should be up on YouTube afterwards, so you get people to watch it if they don't appear, actually get there.
Yes, but we do need people to attend the event here in Columbus to make sure that they actually do it
You got
because.
to show it the solidarity. I mean,
Yes.
see, they have to go out there right. You have to-
Anita, I think you ought to emphasize that Michelle Alexander's book documents the point irrefutably that the whole war on drugs is a political ploy against the black race, and that so to say you only for legalization for medical marijuana is not responding to the documented evidence that she presents, and that's right.
And Anita and I both believe that the war on drugs was racist, it was deliberate. There were 100,000 people in prison in the US in 1970. By the end of Ronald Reagan, 2.4, there's 7 million people now under all forms of incarceration, from jail to prison to probation. And just recently, within the last few months, probation officers shot and killed a guy who wasn't in jail for a violent crime for not reporting probation. And it wasn't his probation officer, right? They sent in 2 guys, including a former Navy SEAL, who went upstairs into his room and shot him dead. So this whole system is incredibly violent. And both Anita and I have been long concerned. If you saw the Free Press, right, we wrote in the Free Press my article about we're number 2 in the nation in per capita deaths. And the Democrats, for some reason, refuse to see the obvious. It's systemic, it's targeting minorities, and it's all about voter suppression. It's deliberate. It is the new Jim Crow, and that's why we've challenged it.
And I think, but we have to know that this does not just affect people of color. Excuse me. There's this climate of fear in this country. It's like we're afraid of each other. We're afraid in our communities, and that empowers our government to erode our civil rights. And I think that everybody is infected by that climate of fear.
And part of the things we agreed on early on, rights enforcement zone, the state of Ohio, and we will arrest any federal official violating the constitutional rights, spying without warrants on the people of Ohio.
And there was a question back here? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I want to thank you for responding to a letter I wrote to you, actually through Move to Amend. And I sent this to our affiliate, our Central Ohio affiliate sent it. But we have not yet heard back from, and I know for sure fact because I'm the one who sent them, we have not heard back from the Democrat or the Republican candidate for governor. We did hear from you, and you wrote some comments that I really appreciate. I really like this. How will you use your public, I'm with Move to Amend, and we sent, a lot of you familiar faces, but we sent a letter to almost, in Central Ohio, every candidate who's running for political office as far as representatives, not the judges, but we did send to other representatives, including the governor and candidates. And we asked, would you, not just how do you feel about it, but we want to know, like, are you going to commit to fighting against this idea of corporate personhood and fighting for a constitutional amendment that abolishes corporate personhood and this idea of money is speech. And you were the only one who responded of the governor candidates. About 14 other people in Ohio have also responded, representatives, and I imagine that number is going to increase as we go to different forums and meet with people. But I wanted to, I thought yours was really great because at one point we said, how will you use your public office to end corporate constitutional rights and big money in politics? Someone was asking about what happens next. And you said, everything I can. And then you continued, so I won't read all that, although I have it with me if anyone wants to see, as well as the other people who have said. But I also thought that this was really neat. It was informative to me. I don't know why I didn't know this, I should have. But you mentioned in here that when people you know, on the ballot, or when we're, on our taxes, when we're asked if we want to contribute to a political party, you can check yes and, you know, some money will be sent, but it's really only to two
The
parties.
Democrats and the Republicans.
Yeah, yeah. Neither one of them was Green Party. I probably should have clarified that, but I thought that was really interesting and something that needs to get out there. So this was during the primary, it was my first time voting Green for governor, and but I was really pleased to do so, and so I'm really glad you're running. And
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for finding us.
I would like to ask one question, because this has confused me since my wife had spoken to me about this. How can a person running for office not, or choose not to debate? I mean, at one point, back when Lincoln and all of them, they stood on soapboxes in the squares, trying to get people to come and rally for them. I mean, how can you possibly even, how is that even legal? Right.
Well, it shouldn't be, and you know, more than that, it should be so shameful that nobody should be able to get away with that. But that's a strategy that not just Kasich is employing. If you've watched some of the debates from other states on C-SPAN,
yeah,
I've been watching some of those.
yeah.
Some of them are so boring. But one thing I've noticed is in more than one instance, it's a third-party candidate and the underdog candidate. So it's a tactic, and most of these are Republicans. Most of them are Republican governors. We have more Republican governors than anything else, and it's a tactic to just not give any kind of credibility to any other campaigns. And it should be so shameful that nobody should get away with that. But I think, and this is a sad thing about us right now, is we expect so little from politicians right now that, you know,
But see,
that
when you
they
say
get
it's a
away with
tactic,
that.
We
when
don't
you
know
say
what
it's a
they're doing.
tactic, I look at it as, it's also cowardice in a sense, that you're not willing to stand there, speak with another individual that is trying to obtain the office that you're after, and not willing to tell them your issues, what you want to do to fix things. It just seems like hiding behind a curtain and saying.
It's a cynical calculation.
You know.
It's a cynical calculation that tells them, I gain more by not even acknowledging those
And
candidates.
Kasich has a long history of this. In 1992, I ran as a Dem against him. He refused to debate me. And he said that, you know, the usual stuff, I wasn't credible. But what I wanted to debate him on was the question of NAFTA, what it was going to do to jobs for Ohioans, and he simply refused. I did track him down, and he actually literally ran out of the athletic club. At the speech he was given, I showed up, and he sort of left early.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, Bob brought up something that I think is really pertinent, and that's NAFTA. Because we know that NAFTA had an effect on all of the immigrants who are coming here now. And NAFTA had that same effect on workers in Toledo and in Youngstown and all throughout Ohio. So, you know, that's another thing that, you know, that's a federal thing that we have to work on. But I think that our leaders are conduits to that next level. And as governor of Ohio, I would go back to the federal government and say a few things. One of them would be to renegotiate NAFTA. The other thing I would say to them is, enough with the wars. They are not working. We are getting poorer, we are struggling more. And I don't know about you all, but I'm sure you heard this past week that the young woman, Malala Yousafzai, was given a Nobel Prize. And, you know, I have just been so proud of that young woman. I'm a feminist, and I look at her and I think, my God, what is she teaching all of us in terms of feminism, in terms of humanity? But I heard a little interview with her, and she was talking about her meeting with President Obama, and she said to him, you know, if you really wanted to make peace in Afghanistan, you wouldn't send bombs and troops, you'd send teachers and books and pencils. And I thought, oh my God, what a wise woman. And that's what I think we need to be telling Washington. Washington, enough of that.
Exactly.
So,
Because that's like, we were looking at something on the internet, and they were showing the amount of money that it would cost. You spend, what was it, $780
Yes,
billion,
$782
billion
billion and only
As well.
$80 billion to feed everyone.
Yeah, well, one of the most interesting factors, the war budget in Afghanistan's been like 220 to 270 billion a year. You could employ every single person in Afghanistan for $4 billion. Full employment economy. They could build their own houses, they could build their own wells, but instead we give it to these private contractors in the United States that have cost-plus contracts and eat up those billions and billions of dollars.
But I have a theory that war, I'm going to tell you, war is money. This is how they funnel money anyway.
sure, it is about money.
It's about money. Right, it's good. You profiteer off of it. Exactly. I mean, and so it's better to send a lot of people into the sand and die and all of that, as opposed to trying to actually fix the problem or, you know, as you said, educate the kids. These girls over there in Afghanistan and Libya and all that, if they try to go to school, oh no, they can be stoned or whipped or beaten or anything, just because they want to educate themselves.
And what
that's a
happens
shame.
to our young girls here who want to be educated? They just don't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's the
all
same
tied
closed
together.
door.
Yeah. Any other last questions for Anita? Yeah.
These signs, will they hold up in the rain?
Oh, sure, we don't use the plastic ones, but they do fine
Yeah, those are
in the
fine.
rain. If you help yourself to a sign
That's
and,
what I was gonna say, there's signs by the door, please take one on your way out. If it doesn't have a wire, you put it in your front window maybe.
And if people want to donate, it's
riosforgovernor.com. You can go to the website and donate, or you can write a check to Rios for Governor. And if it's over $100, we do need your employer information. And Colleen is here to take that.
the treasurer, yeah. So I want to thank Anita for here. She'll be around for a few minutes. But I want to tell you, soon after this, we're going in for a tribute to Susan Truitt, who 3 of the 4 lawyers are here tonight that did Moss v. Bush. And Susan, of course, was the 4th. And we do have a video that shows some of her life, but again, a tremendously powerful woman. And soon after this, we will be having a tribute to our good friend Susan Truitt. Thanks a lot for coming, Anita.